Hi guys, welcome back to math class. We're going to continue working on our graphing skills today. I hope you had a good weekend and you're enjoying our math lessons so far. We're going to start by doing things a little bit backwards today. We're going to go ahead and start on your textbook page 379. As you can see, it looks like we're starting with independent practice, and we're going to actually do this independent practice all together. And then after this video that's going to be really short, you guys are going to do a little science experiment, and you're going to track the data and create one of these graphs, and then you'll have time to work on your homework. So it should be a pretty easy day, pretty fun day. So go ahead and open to page 379. And I just want to review, remember you have your graph, and here you have your x, and here you have your y on your graph, right? We all remember that. Which means that in order to graph data, you need 2 points. You need an x and a y. Okay? So typically what we do when we look at things, we have numbers here. These are usually, your x are going to be usually your increments. And then y tends to be your measurements. Okay, so I'm going to write measurements. Measurements. MEASUREMENT. Okay, and then these tend to be your increments. These are your intervals. Okay, your intervals. And so today you're going to start making your own coordinate planes to be able to make your graphs. Yesterday when we looked at this, or on Friday rather, it wasn't yesterday for you guys. On Friday when we looked at this, you just had a coordinate plane and it just had numbers down here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it had numbers here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it was just going over how you actually plot those points. But today we're going to say, okay, you know how to plot those points. Awesome, congrats. But now we're going to say, do you know how to label the graph properly? Because 99% of graphing and data and statistics is really in the labeling, because if you mix up the labeling, then you mix up all of the data. Okay, so let me X that away. So we have here, we have Ryan's height. Okay, and we have his ages, and then we have his height. Inches. Hey, inches is something that we measure. Okay, so that's what we're going to measure. So that's the y-axis over here because we're measuring it. Okay, the age is our intervals. It's done yearly, so our intervals are just every year from the time he was born at 0, the origin, all the way until he's 9 years old. And then we track to see how tall he is, and we're doing it in the American measurement of inches. It doesn't matter if you know what an inch is, but just to remind you, if you make the little like kind of funny shape with your finger, so that way you can measure from knuckle to knuckle, that's about an inch. Okay, for those of you who are dying to know what an inch is. So we're going to look at this Ryan's height. First, we're going to write ordered pairs for each point, and each one of these is an ordered pair. You need 2 numbers. You need an x and a y. And we said that the age is our x and our height is our y. Okay, so we're going to write our ordered pairs. And remember, they have to come in parentheses. So we're going to write 1, 30. Okay. Then we're going to write 2, 35. Okay, that make that look like a comma. Then our next point, Sungwon is going to be what? Yes, 338. 338. Okay. And our next point, Miriam, is going to be what? Yes, 441. 4, comma, 41. And then our last point, JJ, can you tell us what it is? Yes, 544. So when he was 5 years old, he was 44 inches tall. Okay. So what does the ordered pair 338 tell you about Ryan's age and height? I'm going to call on Pekka. What does 338 tell you about his age and height? Yes, you should have said that he is 3 years old and 38 inches tall. So he is 3 years old. 3 years old. And I'm going to make a little and sign. And 38 inches tall. 38 inches tall. Okay, so now we can read that information. Our next question says, why would the point 642 be nonsense? And I'm going to ask Pillarin to answer this question. Why would 642 be complete nonsense? Like, it just doesn't make sense. Yes, you should have said something about when he was 5 years old, he was 44 inches tall. We don't shrink, so there's no way that at 6 years old, he's 2 inches shorter than he was at 5. Okay, so that's why it's utter nonsense. So go ahead and write that answer down here. I'm not going to write it because it would take me forever to write it. Okay, but it's the idea that you can't shrink. You're not going to lose 2 inches when you get 1 year older. So that's why it's nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. And then it doesn't tell us over here A, B, C, but it does say up here to graph the data on the coordinate grid. So I'm going to go ahead and graph it. And once you are done answering question number C, go ahead and graph these coordinate pairs that you wrote here, A, over in this little graph, just to be sure you know how to graph them. And Mr. Will come around and make sure that your graphs are correct. So if you look at the coordinate grid as you're graphing them, some of our numbers are not perfectly aligned over here. We're counting by tens with a line in between, so really each line is going to be 5. But then we have these things like 38 and 41 and 44. They don't line perfectly. So if you look at what I did over here, I put them just under, just over, just under, so that way you can see what it's about, but it won't tell us the exact. Okay, so go ahead and make yours look like this. And we see, like normal children, he's growing steadily as he gets older. Eventually it'll tap off when he reaches his full adult height. Then we don't expect him to grow any. Okay, but your graph should look like this. Okay. Then let's look here on number 2, plant height. We have the day and we have the height. What is something that we can measure? Are we measuring the day or are we measuring the height? Stepan, are we measuring day or height? We're measuring height, which means that that's going to be our y-axis, so day is our x-axis. Okay. Ola, what is our first ordered pair? You should have said 5, 1. On day 5, it was 1 centimeter. Nastia, what is our second ordered pair? You should have said 10, 3. Gabriella, what's our third ordered pair? 15, 8. Grace, what's our next ordered pair? 20, 12. And make sure when you're writing them, you're using your commas and you're using your parentheses. That way it looks proper. Eden, what's our next ordered pair? 25, 16. Ace, what's our last ordered pair? 30, 19. Okay, very good. Go ahead and graph these ordered pairs over here on your graph. And remember what we said about up here, if it doesn't align perfectly to one of your y-axis, put it as close to where you think it would be. So we know that it's 0, 4, it's counting by 4s. So these lines here, they must be counting by 2. So we would know that this would be 2, this would be 6, 10, 14, 18. Okay, so use that information to graph the points. I'll put the points up here on the TV and Mr. Will walk around to make sure you're all graphing them properly. Okay, so if you look, the plant is getting taller. We would expect that as we go, the plant would get taller. Okay, and we can see that remember when you did your own plant growing experiments over on the windowsill, it took forever for them to start growing, but then once they finally did start growing, they kind of just take off. And so that's what we see. So this graph makes sense. It would not make sense if it was going this way, because that would mean the plant was getting shorter the longer it was growing, and that's usually not the way plants grow. Okay. Then let's look at this question. It says, how would the ordered pair be different if the heights of the plants were measured every 6 days for 30 days instead of every 5 days? How would they be different? Miriam? You should say something that the x would be counting by 6 instead of counting by 5. So you'd have 6, 12, 18, etc. So you would say x's will be counting by 6 instead of by 5. And then you'd also want to say that your y value would be a little bit bigger than what it currently is. Because instead of measuring on the 5th day, you'd be measuring on the 6th. So probably on day 6, it might be like 1 point something. Okay. So you want to say that the numbers would be bigger. X is counting by 6 now, and Y would just be more than what it currently is. So you want to write that down here. Okay. If you need to, you can go back and review what I just said, or if Miriam got it right, she can repeat what the answer is. Okay. I'm going to erase this. That way I can go down. You guys are going to now work through an experiment. Okay, it's not a very big experiment, it's just for you to practice gathering data. So you're going to melt some ice cubes and you're going to keep track of the data. You're going to have the water temperature, you're going to have time, and you're going to have temperature being measured. Now, in the book it says in Fahrenheit, but you might have Celsius thermometers, and if that's the case, just make sure you cross this out and write in C instead. Okay, so which is going to be the